Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mike Harding, and I'm the Chairman of Lynas Corporation Limited, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this annual general meeting of the company. Ladies and gentlemen, today's AGM is being filmed and it's being live streamed via the internet, and details are available on the Lynas website. I would now like to introduce my fellow directors. Our non-executive directors are Kathleen Conlin, Philippe Etienne, John Humphrey and Grant Murdoch. Most of you will also know our Chief Executive Officer, Amanda Lacaze. Also on stage is our Company Secretary, Andrew Arnold. In addition, Gavin Buckingham and Scott Nichols, partners from our audit firm, Ernst & Young, are in the audience today and available to answer questions on the auditor's report in the financial statements. I understand that all shareholders and visitors have registered our share registry boardroom before the meeting. The notice of the meeting was issued to shareholders on the 18th of October 2019, and accordingly this meeting is deemed to have been properly convened. We have a quorum present of more than 2 shareholders, and accordingly this meeting is able to transact the formal business as set out in the notice of the meeting. Before we proceed with the formal business of the meeting, I will deliver a short address, after which Amanda, our CEO and Managing Director, will deliver a presentation. We will then table the 2019 financial statements, and at that point we'll pause to answer any questions on Amanda's presentation and the financial statements. After questions, we will continue with the formal business of the meeting. There will be an opportunity for shareholders to ask questions on specific resolutions after each resolution has been presented. Now, normally at this point in the proceedings, it's normal for the Chairman to give an address which essentially reviews 2019 financial year. During the past 12 months, there was a vast number of media reports on matters in Malaysia, the acquisition proposal by Wesfarmers. In addition, there were several presentations to stakeholders by Amanda and her team's quarterly report. Most of you in this audience today will be very familiar with what happened in 2019. But despite the challenges, we were pleased to deliver a continued set of positive results. During the year, we completed the Lynas Next initiatives and demonstrated Lynas' capacity to produce at higher rates. Operational highlights were record annual production of REO and NdPr, a continued focus on safety that saw Lynas Malaysia achieve 365 days LTI-free in July, and a gold medal CSR rating from EcoVadis that puts our operations in the top 5% of the companies evaluated. From a financial perspective, the principal amount of our loan facilities was reduced to 159 million US, and the company delivered 80 million Aussie annual profit. This is our second consecutive year as a rare earths company to deliver an annual profit. To meet forecast demand in May this year, we announced Lynas' 2025 growth plan. This plan recognises Lynas' unique market position and will expand our production capacity and industrial footprint. During the last 12 months, there has been a significant focus on rare earths industry by the media, governments and key customers. But at this point, I would particularly like to thank our people in Malaysia and Western Australia for their magnificent support during the year. Truly magnificent. The Australian and Japanese and US governments and all our shareholders who have continued to support us through the corporate activities in 2019. What I believe is most productive for the AGM is for Amanda to present Lynas' plans on the way forward. There's been much commentary about matters in Malaysia, West Australia and the US, and I would now like to invite Amanda to address these issues.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. And from a distance, I would particularly like to recognise our Aboriginal communities in the vicinity of our Mount Weld mine. 2 nights ago, when I returned, I had 2 dreams. The first, I had a dream that it took me 5 minutes on the stationary bike to do 1 kilometre when I went to the gym, and that my trainer was not very happy with me. He did say yesterday morning after I finished it was not my finest hour. And the other one that I had was a dream that there were only 5 people who turned up to the AGM this morning. And so I was in, sort of a state of fear and concern about how much money we'd spent for this room and the catering, and there were only 5 people. As it turned out, that was not the case. So I would like to say thank you for taking the time again to actually attend today. This is my, believe it or not, 6th AGM. I was a very young woman when I started. And each of those AGMs has been different. From our on-the-edge financial experience in 2014 through to today. I have done many presentations lately. I sometimes feel, particularly this year, that I'm Amanda everywhere. And you might wonder, it's not just because I like to go to exotic destinations, but it's because there has been a lot of nonsense written about rare earths and Lynas over the years. And it is really important to correct some of that information and perceptions. And we have made significant improvements there. But I start every presentation with the one thing that has been absolutely constant since I joined, and that is this. Lynas is an exciting company in an exciting market. And that is one of the core reasons why we all maintain such energy in terms of our jobs with Lynas. The rare earths market is exciting and growing. It is a terrific opportunity for us to participate in the green revolution as the world finally realises that we cannot lead the wasteful lives that we have led over the past 50 years. We have a focus on sustainability, and that's essential if we're going to grow in the green industries. And we lead the pack in the rare earths industry with a plant which has been designed from the ground up with sustainability principles at its heart. The rare earths market is relatively small, but it's very complex. And as a pure play, Lynas has an exclusive focus on rare earths and a passion for the business. So at Lynas, we are passionate about rare earths. We are passionate about understanding and meeting the needs of our customers. We are passionate about innovating to continuously improve our processing procedures. We're passionate about innovating to develop new and valuable rare earth materials, and Paul, who's at the front here, leads the pack in this area and likes to remind us all that we're not as good as we could be yet. And we're passionate about contributing to the prosperity of our people, our communities and our shareholders. So when I look at the year that we've just had, I'll tell you quite honestly, it's been the toughest year, certainly at the helm of Lynas and probably in my career. A huge amount has been done this year, and we really haven't had any time to stop to take breath through the year. And so Mike recognised the extraordinary performance of all of our people. I think that it's really, one of the things that people here might not understand is the true commitment. In Malaysia, for example, where there's been a lot of noise, I think 1,500 in separate press reports in a year, that's an average of 5 a day. That's not counting how many times they were reprinted. But in the past year, we have not lost a single senior manager, not a single process engineer, not a single production superintendent, not a single shift supervisor, and our turnover amongst our technicians and operators is about half industry standard. So that gives you a strong indication of the commitment of the people in Lynas to continuing to run a strong, positive business. So this year, and I really like to get things into groups of 5, but I couldn't, so there's 6. We delivered the Lynas Next project. We dealt with political and regulatory challenges in Malaysia. The heightened geopolitical focus on rare earths driven by the trade tensions between the US and China have certainly taken our attention. We successfully defended the somewhat nebulous takeover proposal from Wesfarmers. We announced our growth plan for what we want the business to look like in 2025, and we announced the new arrangements for our JARE loan facility. So last year, I think I showed you a chart which showed that our enterprise value in 2014 was about $700 million, of which about $570 million was debt. So the equity value is about $130 million. By last year, we'd got to the stage where, or even today, where our enterprise value bumps around between about 1.8 and 2 billion, and the debt is about 200 million. So this is a significant improvement, and in FY19 we continued to grow value built on our unmatched assets and our very clear focus on continuous improvement. So I think I've said this before, it bears saying over and over again, our value comes from under the ground at Mount Weld. It's a true Tier 1 asset, high grade, long life. We are today the world's second largest producer and the only significant rest of world producer of rare earths. We have an absolutely comprehensive approach to safety, sustainability, environmental stewardship and community engagement. I am not proud that we broke the record, but I am incredibly proud that not long ago we notched up 461 days lost time injury-free at our Malaysian facility. 461 days lost time injury-free is an exceptional performance in any business of any type. But certainly in a business like ours with complex and difficult processes, it is an outstanding result. And whilst you might say that there were a few days we got lucky, you don't get lucky 461 days in a row. I've already talked about continued process and product innovations, and we continue to enjoy the confidence of our key customers. We have quality long-term relationships with manufacturing supply chains around the world. Despite all of the swirl around us, our operating teams and many of our executive team are here today, and I would encourage you to speak to them. So Paul LaRue, who is our head of sales and marketing, Cam Leong, who is our head of operations, Gaudens Sturzenegger, right here, who is our chief financial officer, and of course Andrew Arnold, who is our company secretary and general counsel. Make sure that you ask them all the difficult questions and just ask me the easy ones, yep? Okay, so the operations continued to perform well despite all of those issues. We had a second profitable year, we generated over 100 million in cash, and we delivered record production. And I love this chart. Just because I love this chart, because all of the arrows go in the right direction, and we intend for those arrows to continue going in the right direction. But let me move then to some of the specifics in the year. So Lynas Next. Lynas Next was conceived to deliver two outcomes. First was to ensure that we got full value from our existing assets. Cam won't like me to call it this, but I sort of think about the Lynas Next program as debottlenecking on steroids. And so I think I showed you this when we first talked about it. Our first, 220 tonnes a month of NdPr was I think took about $5 billion. Our second 220 tonnes a month of NdPr took about I think it was about $400 million. Our next 160 tonnes of NdPr from Lynas Next took us about $35 million. So in terms of capital efficiency, really significant. So in the year, the teams delivered the Lynas Next project on time and on budget, but more importantly, it actually worked. sometimes project managers think their deliverable is on time, on budget, and if you say, but does it actually work? They go, blah, 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 blah. Well, in this instance, we put the fact that it worked first, and the on time and on budget was just an assumption that people would do. So we can produce at the higher rates. I think most people are aware that we continue to operate with a constraint in Malaysia in terms of processing, which has meant that we've been able to do this pretty much in the first 6 months of the year, but not in the second 6 months of the year. The new ND and PR separation circuit was successfully commissioned. The addition of products to our range is important. It's not just about accessing new markets and therefore acquiring new revenue. It's actually about satisfying 100% of demand for our customers, which ensures that they don't have to have relationships with other rare earth supply firms. The operational improvements at both Mount Weld and in Malaysia have improved reliability and our recovery rates. And of course, as part of this, we also updated our resource and reserve statement, reinforcing once again Mount Weld's position as the preeminent deposit in the world. A little more detail. If we look at Mount Weld in FY19, the Lynas Next initiative was really important. And as somebody said to me, this came as a result of real exploration. For the first time, we actually drilled right down to the primary ore source. We now have a deposit which not only has a 25-year plus mine life for what is in the reserves today, but it is open at depth and it is open laterally. So that means that we expect that it will have significantly more life as we go forward. We commissioned our third tailings dam. Over time, operation of the tailings dams at Mount Weld has been a real challenge for the team. Because we're mining the oxidised layer of our deposit, it's very fine material. And when it comes out of the flotation process, it's been very difficult to get that to beach, to dry out in the tailings dams. And this is what's really important. We don't want a dam full of liquid. We actually want it to be dry. And so it was not beaching in the way we would have normally expected. And our team there has done some extraordinary work around improving the deposition, improving the way that we actually manage the dams. I don't have a picture of it. I wish I did. We had this Mudmaster machine which actually drives up and down the dam. I think it must be the most boring job, but apparently the guy likes to listen to the radio. But anyway, it drives up and down and it churns the material so that it gets exposed to the sun. It allows it to dry out. As well as that, we have added particular reagents to help with the material and beaching. And now that we have 3 dams, we're able to manage the way that we deposit the material so that we are giving it time to dry out. Why does this matter? Well, it matters because our goal is for this, which, by the way, has about 7% rare earths in it, which makes it a relatively rich deposit itself. We just don't quite know how to recover them yet, is to get it dry enough for us to be able to dig it out and dry stack it, and therefore to be able to reuse the dams. Why does that matter? Well, it matters because building dams at Mount Weld is really expensive, right? Mobilising equipment to come out, doing all of those sorts of things. But it also matters because in our focus on sustainability, reducing the size of our footprint and our impact on the environment is at the centre of our objectives. And so therefore, something which may appear relatively mundane, like how to get tailings to beach in a tailings dam, is actually a really important thing within our business. We also started our 3rd mining campaign, and it's now substantially complete. We've started processing mining campaign 3 ore already. And it's important because we actually have more of what is the Duncan zone within the ore body, which is an enriched area for heavy rare earths. In Malaysia, and this slide was at the end of the year, we had the 365 days LTI free, but as I said, we got up to 461. The Malaysian site, for those of you who have not been here, is not properly represented there because we have a big blue box in the middle of it, which is a bit of a pity because I would have liked to have shown you all of it. But you can see it is a large site. You can also see over here, no, yeah, I can get it on you. Over here, this is the NUF storage. You can see that is perfectly stacked, beautifully arranged. Once again, world best practice. A lot of operations of this sort will pump this is synthetic gypsum, will pump that gypsum out in a slurry and put it in a dam. We go the extra step and we actually put it through a filter press so it can be dry stacked, which is safer for everybody, so we don't have the potential safety issues with dams collapsing or otherwise, but also is, once again, allows us to reduce our environmental footprint. Unfortunately, over this side you can't really see it, but we have a much smaller area, which is the controversial material. Once again, the same, perfectly dry stacked, and in fact, in that instance, with a temporary cap over it. So just back, however, talking about the Lynas Next initiatives, we have proven the ability to operate at Lynas Next rates. We've successfully started up the NdPr. We've got new SX circuits, which allows us to separate lanthanum and cerium. We are short lanthanum in terms of demand, so we are continuing to look for ways to optimise that production. We upgraded our product finishing circuits, and then some really important, once again, sort of less sexy than new products, but upgrading our waste gas treatment circuits. 2014 in Malaysia, SO2 emissions were 500 ppm was the requirement. That was reduced to 100 ppm. We actually met that about 18 months ahead of the date that the new regulation came in, and continuing to improve waste gas treatment, continue to improve the way that we manage our residues. These are, once again, all part of our sustainability initiatives. So just some pictures for those who haven't seen it. On the left, the rather fetching lilac neodymium. And on the right, the not quite so fetching lustrous black praseodymium. One of the examples that some of you would have seen if you came to the Investor Day, but I love to actually show this, is that as an organisation, we are a learning organisation, and our people are learning about how to do things better all the time. And if we look at Mount Weld and we look at the various stages, top right, I hate pointers. This is producing the equivalent of 220 tonnes a month of NdPr. 3 stories high, 26 flotation cells, lots of steel and concrete. I got to tell you, I don't really like steel and concrete. It's not a productive asset. Phase 2, once again, if I could get the pointer, here, another 220 tonnes a month of NdPr, 9 flotation cells, 1 story high, not so much steel and concrete. Lynas Next, which gave us 160 tonnes a month of NdPr equivalent, a single flotation cell on the ground, even less steel and concrete. And this is an example of the improvement in understanding and improvement in process that our people have been able to deliver. Lynas 2025, which I'll talk about shortly, we're expecting will be 3 to 5 flotation cells. In Malaysia, some really good examples. For example, the MGO circuit, which originally had 8 hoppers in a single line and is an area where we suffer significant rare earth losses. We've put in now 3 heat exchangers. That allows us to control the heat, to control the pH, and therefore to improve recoveries. Also allows new design on the hoppers has allowed us to better control the reaction rate with the MGO. But this is one of the ones which I just really love as an example of the innovation which is just within our people. In Malaysia, I have to tell you, our engineering team is exceptional. And the first heat exchanger that we bought broke down after about 6 months. We went back to Alpha Laval, who were the suppliers, and they said, oh, too hard, can't fix it, you know, you have to buy another one. And we're like, not from you, buddy. But no, we didn't say that. But our engineering team, with one of our local engineering suppliers, said, we reckon we can fix it. And they did. And they actually sliced it all the way open and they fixed it. It went back into service. It served out its normal life as an asset. And that is an example of innovation in everyday life. You know, lots of times we think about innovation just in terms of breakthrough, but a lot of these thoughts around innovation every single day, thinking of just a different way to do things, is at the heart of the continued improvement in our business. So moving on from Lynas next, I think you all know and have followed our Malaysian adventures this year. At last year's AGM, we were waiting for the outcome of the Executive Review Committee, and I'm pleased to say we came through that with flying colours. But there have been many twists and turns since, and the small band of activists in Malaysia have proven to be quite tenacious. But gosh, we've also had a lot of positives. And today we are proud of our performance through the review committee process, our stakeholder relationships, and the support of our local communities and our people. So, worth noting, this was the 4th scientific review of our operations, and it found that Lynas operations are low risk and compliant with all relevant regulations, and that our residue facilities are properly managed, or depending upon the translation you choose, another translation says perfectly managed, which I quite like as well. We have in the year developed quality relationships with the Pakatan Harapan government and with a number of key ministers in particular. Our staff and local community support is stronger than ever, and indeed a number of our local community members have been very vocal within Malaysia in terms of support for our business. And as you would know, in mid-August we had the licence extended, unfortunately only for 6 months with a number of conditions. Really, it could have been 3 years with a number of conditions, or 6 months with, as it turns out, a 4-year view of our business, because one of the conditions relates to a 4-year condition. So it certainly gives us a pathway to success. And those conditions are the relocation of cracking and leaching to WA within 4 years, that we are to build a PDF for the WLP, and that the 0.5% that we were previously spending on R&D for WLP should be paid as a rebate to the government. And that's a bit sad. You know, we're a technical firm in a technical industry. Research is the lifeblood of science. We would rather be spending that money on research, but it is as it is. We never take our communities for granted, not in Australia nor in Malaysia. We seek at all times to make a meaningful contribution to our communities. I think this is important. You cannot run a prosperous business if those around you do not prosper. But I think it's also important for our people. You know, it is really important to understand that you can do something which helps the people, your families, your friends, your neighbours. And I think I've said this before, but you can't just dial it in. You can't just write a cheque and put a tick in the box. And one of my favourite examples of this is in Laverton, which is near Mount Weld. There's a women's refuge there, and they really wanted a chicken coop. Right? Now, the easiest thing to do for a firm like us is to sign a cheque and say, here, go and buy yourself a chicken coop. But for the ladies at the refuge, that would have been singularly unhelpful. Right? Like, I got to tell you, I would not know where to go and buy a chicken coop, and I certainly wouldn't know how to install it. They may be a bit more practical than me. But what actually happened is that Tony Mallock, who is our General Manager of our Mount Weld operations, he sourced a chicken coop, and he put it in the back of his truck, and that week, instead of flying out to work, he drove out to work. Right? And then, with careful management, because bear in mind a lot of these women are quite scared of men, we sent a team of our guys down who actually installed the chicken coop. Right? So the outcome is that the Women's Refuge in Laverton now has a chicken coop. And if we had merely signed a cheque, it is possible that they still wouldn't. And we have many examples of our people actually going the extra mile and doing the things that make us important to the community, which is once again why we get our community licence to operate. So I have referenced safe and sustainable production. Michael referenced the fact that we were awarded gold medal with EcoVadis. That puts us in the top 5% of firms that are assessed worldwide for CSR activities. We are certified. We've maintained those certifications. We get, when the third-party auditors come through, we've become accustomed to getting many best practices, very few opportunities for improvement, and I don't think that we've had, an example over the last year where we've actually failed on any particular point. So, just turning then a little to the point that I made about the international spotlight on rare earths. I'm sure many of you have read this, that there are those, particularly in the US, that have discovered rare earths. I think many of you have probably been shareholders in the business for quite a long time. And of course, you would recall that in 2011, when there was the rare earths crisis, you basically had the three responses. Western Europe set up a research alliance to study rare earth supply chains. The US responded by launching a case in the WTO. The Japanese, of course, responded by funding the last tranche of Lynas. Today, who actually has security of supply? The Japanese. Today, whose market is buoyant and has grown about 60% since 2012? The Japanese market. Right, so we've been talking to the US customers, of course, but also the government for many years. Paul thinks that he's got a pile of paper about this big, which is various different submissions or information provided to them. And it's taken a fair while to really move through to get a real understanding that just digging more rare earth out of the ground does not give you a secure rare earth supply chain. And so we are very pleased with the fact that the US has really recognised this at this stage. We are absolutely uniquely positioned today to take advantage of the fact that we have real focus on this sector from particularly the US, the Australian and the Japanese governments. And part of our expansion into the US is really driven by this. We have spent a lot of time connecting with these various governments. You will have read that they're all talking about funding in one form or another. Certainly, we think that if any government is going to put money into industry, and as a significant taxpayer, I'm not sure I'm all that keen on it, but nonetheless, if they are, that they should put it into a business like ours, where taxpayer dollars are relatively protected compared to going into, some wannabe startups that may not be able to deliver the same outcome. Market pricing, just a word on that. I know everybody is very keen on that. Unfortunately, we have not seen a sustained improvement in pricing as a result of the discussion. And in fact, the spotlight internationally can be something of a double-edged sword. Part of the potential response from Chinese industry is to say, well, we don't want a whole lot of new supply starting up, and so therefore, some of you will have seen that the quotas for production in China have already been raised, and certainly the price at which they're prepared to sell their product remains, I think Paul wrote, in the doldrums in his monthly report. So we think about the market dynamics. I think that we've got the magnet market continues to grow, and particularly our customers continue to grow significantly in demand. And the catalyst market, particularly for lanthanum in the US, is also very buoyant. Paul's work is focused on developing strategic partnerships that will allow us to continue to grow with the market and at a minimum maintain our share. So as I said, it took a long time, but we finally get an understanding that it's not just about the resource. So if we think about just the magnet supply chain, mining, separation, metal alloy, magnet component, OEM, when you think about this, China is consistent across all elements of that supply chain. And this gives them a significant competitive advantage on which they continue to build. When we look at outside China and we look at Lynas, we actually have built our capability to work right through that supply chain. We've got our mine in Australia, our processing plant in Malaysia. We toll manufacture most of our material into a metal via a Vietnamese metal maker in Vietnam. And then, of course, we have significant relationships through the rest of the supply chain with Japan, but also with US and European OEMs. And then apart from that, really, the rest of the operations are very small and very fragmented. So our task is to ensure that we continue to build supply chain resilience and supply chain efficiency to allow a robust outside China supply chain that can compete with the integrated inside China supply chain. So remembering, we're serving a high growth market, we're an exciting business in an exciting economy, in an exciting market. We see significant growth, particularly for magnetic materials, but one of the reasons why we're very focused on our specialist materials as well is that you can be certain that for every kilo of NdPr we take out of the ground, we're going to take out 2 kilos of cerium and 1 kilo of lanthanum. So finding a home for those products is very important. So I think some of you were at our Investor Day, but I thought I'd just say a few words about Lynas 2025. I'm very proud and excited of our Lynas 2025 plan. It's not very often you get to fundamentally reshape what you're doing, and that's what we will be doing. So as we look at Lynas today in Western Australia, we have, of course, our Mount Weld resource and our concentrator. And then in Malaysia, we have all of our processing. So we have a strong base for our business, but we can make it better, and that's what Lynas 2025 is all about. So in 2025, we will look different. In Western Australia, we will have an expanded operation, and both the Australian and the Western Australian governments are pretty excited about this. We'll have our mining, our concentrator, cracking and leaching, and potentially also upstream SX. In Malaysia, we will continue to have a dynamic operation focused on solvent extraction and product finishing. It's a great location. It's close to our end-use customers, and we expect that we will continue with our operations there. And then in the US, we are building new capability. In Texas, the first stage of that is our heavy rare earth separation plant. No one can separate heavy rare earths outside of China today. It's a terrific opportunity for us to take, a preeminent market position. And we expect over time we will have light rare earth separation there as well. So if we think about this, 2025, we will have a larger business able to meet forecast demand growth with an efficient capacity expansion, and we will be producing about 10,500 tonnes a year of NdPr. If you think about that, at design, originally Lynas was about 5,000 tonnes a year of NdPr. After next, it was about 7, and now we're targeting by 2025 10,500 tonnes. We will have a diversified industrial footprint. And that's important. I know that Malaysian regulatory situation is, well, I know that it is a bit difficult. And it seems a bit exotic, but frankly, sovereign risk has increased all over the world. I mean, who here would like to run a business in the UK, for example, right now? Or the US, or Hong Kong, so the idea that we diversify our industrial footprint to mitigate sovereign risk is an important part of the Lynas 2025 plan. We will continue to be the supplier of choice to non-Chinese customers. We will have added separated heavy rare earths and further value-added cerium products to our range. Of course, it will enhance our earnings. We wouldn't be doing it if it wouldn't. And in terms of our capital plan, we've set ourselves a capital envelope of $500 million. It will be self-funded because the Japanese have, via JARE, have restructured the loan, which allows us to accumulate all of the cash between now and 2025 to reinvest in the business. So finally, many of you will have seen this slide. Building on our unique competitive advantages, lots of people like to talk about this, about being unique, but I would tell you that your company is the pick of the litter. We are set apart from the others. Mother Nature has given us Mount Weld. Time has given us pole position in the market. The hard work and commitment of our people and their determination to win has seen us develop the intellectual property and operating capability that allows us to continue to grow. So now I'll hand back to Mike.
Well, thank you, Amanda. We'll now move to questions. I will table the financial statements of the company for the year ended 30th of June 2019, consisting of the annual financial report, the director's report and the auditor's report. The annual report was dispatched with a notice of the meeting to those shareholders who requested a hard copy. An electronic copy was made available on the ASX website and the company's website. We would now like to ask for questions on Amanda's presentation and the financial statements. If you would like to ask a question, please stand behind the microphone over there. And like every year, I get told off for rushing. We're not going to rush you, so as many questions as you want, unless if it gets dark, then we'll stop. So questions on all that's gone so far. No? Oh, yes.
It's Michael Strakosh, Abbott Cove Super Fund. How many people do you expect to have to retrench from your Malaysian operations to replace when you start processing in Laverton?
Does that work? Yeah. Our objective will be not to be retrenching people, to find ways to redeploy them. So that's why I talk about thinking about what we do in Malaysia, for example, as we start to get more end-of-life products, recycling becomes more of an opportunity. The ability to feed some of that, the ability to continue. I mean, we're going to be making an extra 3,500 tonnes a year of NdPr. So finding ways to redeploy them is certainly a key part. As well as that, in terms of, as we think about what we're going to build in WA, we're actually going to use quite a lot of our Malaysian engineering skill. And even some of our Malaysian people, as all of you who've been here for some time would know, that the ramp-up process in a rare earths plant can be littered with challenges, and having people who are already experienced in the operation will work very well. So there will be opportunities for people within our business, and we will seek to certainly be retaining as much of the talent as possible.
So they'll be on 457 visas, I gather.
Well, some will be. Kalgoorlie actually has something I didn't know about before, but it's a regional migration agreement which would allow us to bring some of our people in there. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. More questions?
I would just like to hear more about the competition we face and are likely to face.
So there are many firms which aspire to start up in the rare earths market. Some of them have been, I would suggest, perennial juniors. You know, they've been decades as projects. Paul and I were at a conference one day where someone was introduced and asked how long he'd been working on his project, and it was something like 25 years or something, and I said I'd blow my brains out if it were me. That's probably not sensible to say that publicly, but anyway. I think that it's important to note that projects need to be able to stand up commercially, notwithstanding everything that might be said about government funding. And I make this point that Lynas, yes, the Japanese government funding has been an important part of our success, but 2/3 of what it took to stand up the Lynas business came from equity and the other third from debt. So it stands up commercially, but it has been very difficult, and that is with the Mount Weld resource. Nobody else's resource is as rich, and that's one of the reasons why it's been difficult for people to actually stand up their projects. So as we look today, Mountain Pass in the US has recommenced mining operations and produces a concentrate, which today is then sent to China. There is no other funded junior project at this time. On the other hand, you know, I'm a marketer, and I learned at university that, you know, the more competition you have, the more dynamic markets are, the more innovation you have, the more markets grow. So if others are able to come into the market, that's fine. But our objective is to ensure that we are the best supplier to our customers, and that no matter who else knocks on our door, that they continue to choose us.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. More questions?
Well, I'd like to congratulate you on the progress you've made in the last year to dealing with your current problems. That's very encouraging. But do you have plans for the eventual rehabilitation of the Mount Weld mine site?
Oh, most certainly. And in fact, Cam will be delighted to talk to you about that some more at lunchtime. But we have a provision within our accounts specifically for the rehabilitation of the site. And as we are operating the site, we everything that we are doing is with a knowledge of what it will look like when we rehabilitate, so that the way that we use the waste dump... Yeah, Cam wants to say something right now, actually.
I can answer that very, very clearly. That the Western Australian government actually require us to submit a closure plan when we actually submit our plans for operations. So the plan is actually by law.
I have some slight familiarity with the uranium mining industry, and I have just had a request from the operating company of the Ranger uranium mine. Of course, a condition of their licence to mine was that they should rehabilitate the site back to natural bushland, and they found through a series of, as I understand it, problems which were unavoidable, but they don't have the money to do it now. And I've just had a request to buy additional shares just to fund the mining. Do you have a sinking fund to do all this?
No, not specifically. We hold it as a provision on the balance sheet. So we don't have in Australia specifically a sinking fund. We pay a certain amount to the WA government for, as all mining companies do, for a rehabilitation fund. And certainly in Malaysia we have our bond which is held with the AELB, which the intent of that is to assist with rehabilitation on the site. But I think you can be assured that with our 25-year mine life that it's probably not going to be worrying either you or me when it comes to mine closure. I'm hoping it might worry me.
I think Ranger was given its licence to mine about 30 or 40 years ago. So.
Yeah. So look, I think that your point, I think that there is a difference in philosophy these days. I think the focus on sustainability is very real, and I think that, as we go about our activities at Mount Weld, it is always with a weather eye on what's the effect in terms of closure. So that's things like when I was talking about the tailings dams, reducing the amount of land that we disturb, managing, a waste dump and all of those sorts of things in a way that will facilitate the eventual rehab.
Okay, well, I look forward to seeing it happen. Well, I doubt I'll live that long, actually, but thank you very much.
All right, thank you. You've made us all smile anyway. Any more questions? No, don't worry, we'll get to you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Dave Fearon's my name. I'm a shareholder. I'd like to thank Amanda for a very entertaining and enlightening talk. It was vitally interesting. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Amanda, which wasn't so much in your report but it's in the annual report, is reference to the Malawi deposit. Just wondering how we're going with that potentially, and with the problem with the title, perhaps.
Sure. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to immediately pass that to my colleague to the left.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. And thank you for your question, sir. So we have the 25-plus year deposit at Mount Weld. That, for the foreseeable future, will be our primary focus as feedstock. The Malawi deposit was acquired several years ago as a potential alternative source of feedstock. Now, as you've noted, it has been subject to a dispute. There is another party who claims an interest in respect of that deposit. That matter is an ongoing dispute that we will continue to pursue, but there is no resolution of that matter at present. So we have written down the value of the Malawi assets to zero in our accounts. We do not presently have an intention to further do work in Malawi, but equally we will continue to pursue defending our title to our deposit in Malawi. So that matter is a work in progress.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The gentleman at the back has tried a couple of times.
Thank you. My question relates to the PDF in Kuantan in Malaysia. What's your plan, Amanda, for the PDF? Specifically, how you plan to do it? When can that be done? And the cost of it?
Okay. So prior to the licence renewal on the 3rd of March, we require approval from the Pahang State Government for specific site or sites for the PDF. And we are well progressed with that, with discussions with the Pahang State Government on that matter. With respect to the PDF construction itself, we have actually 8 years of experience with storing this residue in a safe manner. So our storage cells at the LAMP are designed according to international best practice for permanent storage. So they're above ground storage, engineered storage cell, triple lined with underground leak detection to ensure that there is no seepage into the environment or contamination of the groundwater. So it is our expectation that the construction, which is in line with the IAEA's recommendations on material of this sort, which is low-level, normal occurring radioactive material, that we will engineer the PDF facilities in equivalent fashion. In terms of cost...
When?
Well, the when will be once we've got all of the approval. We will then proceed with it, you know, with normal process. So I would expect that, you know, we can construct a PDF or a residue storage facility on site in, you know, sort of 6 to 12 month time frame. So we would expect that it will be, we'll start seeing material moving off the site, you know, sort of over the next couple of years.
Good. And the costs?
We're still working on that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Just regarding China. You know, the world market prices, as you're saying, is coming down. I believe they're ramping up their production. And I also believe that they have a world-class production technology now in China. How do you see Lynas competing with that if they can easily ramp up their volumes and flood the market? How do you see that progressing?
We also have world-class processing technology. We have the single largest facility in the world. We would say that there's Northern Rare Earths would have a cost advantage over us, but no other significant cost advantage exists. And I say that because it is important to have muscle in your business, and muscle comes from being cost competitive in this type of market. So do I welcome the idea that the Chinese might use the dominant position to really make some very difficult market settings? No, I don't. Do I approach that knowing that we will apply the same sort of, you know, sort of know-how and skill that we've shown to date to make sure that we can find our way through it? Absolutely, I do.
Okay. And lastly, I understand that there might be, or there may be, a court challenge in Malaysia against the decision to extend Lynas's. What's your plan if it comes to eventuate that such a challenge?
In the same way that we have had 4 scientific reviews of our business, which makes us, I think, the most reviewed business, we've also been through 4 separate court challenges, including a full merits hearing in 2015. So we would deal with that with the same degree of confidence that we've dealt with everything else. So I'm unsure of your connections to Malaysia. However, what I would suggest to you is that simply not accepting the view of 4 sets of international experts and just continuing to say, but we don't believe it because it doesn't suit our narrative, which is what the anti-Lynas activists say, does not stand up in court any better than it stands up in the community. So we run our business ethically. We run it with an absolute focus on being safe for our people, safe for the community, and safe for the environment. And so we are very happy to have that tested in any area.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions? Okay.
Just a point, the previous speaker, China would, I expect, to be cross-subsidising their production in order to try and drive the economic basis of this company underground, if not negative to a great degree, so they can once again hold the Japanese by the short and curlies is a nice way of putting it.
I just knew you were going to say that.
And because historically they have and cut off supply to all and sundry except for the Chinese. The other thing that the Chinese don't have is A, traceability, B, clean air, C, radioactive control of the radioactive byproducts, or any of the above, all of the above, and how does one say, as I said last year, the anti-Lynas effort is a Chinese cat's paw. And if you read the local papers after the defector that turned up and said what the Chinese were doing, it is much more, how does one say, accurate is the nice way of putting it, that Lynas is under pressure from the Chinese government.
I think that there are many opinions on this, and you know, I'm never a big fan of conspiracy theories, you know, and the opinions range across sort of a soft power or even indeed people seeking to curry favour with the Malaysian government through to something which is, you know, maybe more direct. What I would say to this is that I have a great deal of admiration for the way that the Chinese government has built its capability in rare earths. They've taken a generational view on this. Where they are today is a result of strategies which were conceived and implemented 30 years ago. And the West has absolutely been complicit in handing control of this important industry to the Chinese in their pursuit for ever lower costs for components. So the Chinese absolutely have taken a strategic view of this. Yes, there are certain ways that they have set up policies around tax and other subsidies to ensure that this is not just about resource utilisation, but it is about the downstream jobs which are created as well. So one of the reasons why I see too many nights inside aeroplanes is ensuring that Western governments are very aware of this and that this is not just about how do we get more resource, but as a whole of industry you know, sort of strategy which is required here, and it needs to be in more than 3 or 4 year parliamentary terms, which is the way that the West tends to think, or even worse, Western industry thinking in, you know, 3-month or even 6-month terms. So we do need to take a more strategic view of it, but my confidence is that in China, many participants in the rare earths industry understand that having a Lynas in the market is actually a good thing for the market, because the technology transfer into other solutions other than rare earths would be relatively rapid if there was not a Lynas alongside the Chinese suppliers. So yes, it's a tricky. It's like so many things. Your greatest strength can also be your greatest weakness. Our greatest strength is the fact that we are in non-Chinese supply. It's also a risk in our business.
Okay, there's a gentleman right at the back that's been trying to get himself up and off.
I'm company, Castle Point Holdings. We're mainly investors in various companies and things like that, and we've recently become involved and interested in rare earths. Can you tell me what advantage you see investing in Lynas has over, say, other Australian companies like Galaxy and Arcade and the various other, seem to be smaller companies that are involved in this market as well? I understand that Australia has about 11% of the world's resources in rare earths, and it would seem that there may be competition on the horizon.
So welcome, Alan. So I think if we take a couple of the examples, so you mentioned Galaxy. So Galaxy is in lithium. So if we start with that, if I say, why rare earths, why not lithium? I would actually say to you that one of the significant end-use markets for both of our products is automotive, transport of one sort or another. So with lithium, what you're doing is you're building big facilities, making big investments, waiting for the big bang when everyone moves into battery electric vehicles. The reality is that most of the world won't leap from an internal combustion engine to a battery electric vehicle, right? What they will mostly do is move through from an ICE to a hybrid, to a plug hybrid, ultimately to a battery electric vehicle. The benefit with rare earths compared to lithium is we're in ICE vehicles. We got all of that plus a bit more in a hybrid. We got all of that plus a bit more in a plug hybrid, and we got all of that plus a bit more in a battery electric vehicle. So as an investor, you're de-risked, right? You're not waiting for that sort of magic day when it all happens. Then when we have a talk about the rest of the projects which are looking to get funded in Australia, it really comes down to, I guess, your risk appetite as an investor. We are a business. We make money. We are the only ones.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. And there's a gentleman there.
Bob Richardson, private investor. Through you, Chairman, Amanda, congratulations on an extraordinary year of performance and heavy workload. Can I ask if you could expand a little on the Blue Line joint venture? When will the construction start, can you suggest, and how long will it take, please?
Paul? No. Blue Line is really exciting because the US market has allowed itself to be really exposed, right? And we think that by starting with a relatively defined facility there with the heavy rare earths as a starting point, we will help to start to reinvigorate the supply chain in the US market. Texas is a good place to do business, without question. WA is a great place to run a mining company. Texas is a good place to run a processing firm. It certainly has a great deal of interest and focus from the US government, and they are particularly focused on finding an alternate source of heavy rare earths. As you know, because of your own background, particularly important in a number of military applications. So we're going through that process at present. We have the plant engineered, the design of it complete. We've costed it. We are in various different negotiations with respect to the funding and the offtake of that plant, and we do expect to have more announcements on that either sometime in the next 2 to 3 months.
Thank you very much. It was interesting to see Senator Canavan's announcement being reported by the Nikkei Asian Review about 3 hours ago, saying very positive things about that proceeding.
Joins.
There's a gentleman there that I think...
He's got something. You've dropped something,
Excuse
Bob.
me.
Bob.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much. My notes.
So, Bob, Andrew was actually with Senator Canavan in Washington last week, so I think he can make some more comments on that.
Yes, Bob, thank you very much for those comments. As you mentioned, Senator Canavan did lead a trade delegation to the US just last week, and Lynas was pleased to be one of the companies who were invited to join that trade delegation. There's no question that both in the US and in Australia, there's a recognition of the opportunity for those two countries in particular to work together to improve the resilience of their supply chain in critical minerals. And so we're very pleased to participate in that trade delegation, and it works into the opportunity that you were discussing with Amanda a moment ago to develop potentially heavy rare earth separation on the ground in the US, which would provide greater resilience to the US market in respect of that source of supply. So we think that's an excellent opportunity for our company.
Thank you, Andrew. Are there any more questions? If not, we'll proceed with the formal business of the meeting. Attendees will have received one of the following cards upon registration: a blue voting card, an orange non-voting card, and yellow visitors. This year, we will again use the procedure whereby each resolution will be discussed and each resolution will be voted on by the way of a poll. Details of the proxies received for each resolution will be shown upon the screen and then put to the meeting. As stated on the proxy form, the Chairman will vote undirected proxies in favour of each resolution. Each shareholder who is eligible to vote at today's meeting will have received a blue-coloured card from the registration desk. At the conclusion of the meeting, representatives from Boardroom will collect the completed voting cards from each shareholder. The notice of the meeting having been duly distributed to shareholders, we will take the notice as read. Resolution 1 seeks approval of the 2019 Remuneration Report, which is set out in the company's annual report. The Remuneration Report sets out specific details of the company's remuneration framework during the year 2019. Proxies received for the Resolution 1 concerning the Remuneration Report are now shown upon the screen. Are there any questions? No. I now put the Resolution 1 to the meeting for voting on. Oh, sorry. Didn't see it.
Oh, it's me again. The Remuneration Report has overwhelming support for two reasons. One is the CEO is actually competent, which is a rarity, I find. And the second one is, despite government of Malaysia's intervention, the company has succeeded in continuing to increase production. The price of production is variable, but if you increase it with a lower cost of production, it can't be all bad. So I am voting for the Remuneration Report as a rarity.
Thank you. Oh, rarity, yeah. So I now put that resolution to the meeting to be voting on by a poll at the end, and the text is shown somewhere on the screen there. Resolution 2 relates to the proposed re-election of Kathleen Conlin as a director. Kathleen joined the company as a non-executive director on the 1st of November 2011. Details of Kathleen's background and experience are set out in the explanatory memorandum on the screen. The proxies received for this resolution are shown on the screen. Are there any questions relating to Kathleen? No? Sure you don't want to go? Oh, shouldn't have said that.
Someone's got to do it. The having women on the board, percentage-wise, it's a bit low. It's only 4 out of, 6, 2, 4, 5, 7, sorry. Can't count.
So it's 2 out of 6.
2 out of 6, is it? Well, 40% is the gold standard, whereby if a company has 40% or more women on the board, you have a better chance of the company being successful in the long term. And Ms. Conlin is... only problem she has is there's not 2 of her. I thought that would be good.
Yeah, we like that. I now put resolution... Sorry, go on.
We're both really bossy, so we're worth 40%.
I'm not going there now. You got up and did this. I wish I could go down there actually and get out of the way of this one. So I now put that resolution to the meeting for voting on at the end of the meeting. And the resolution is shown on the screen, I hope, yeah. Resolution 3 relates to the proposed grant of up to 545,740 performance rights for the benefit of our CEO and Managing Director, Amanda Lacaze. Each performance right is a right to acquire one share in the company in the future. More details regarding the performance rights that are proposed to be issued to Amanda are set out in the explanatory memorandum. Proxies for the resolution are now shown up on the screen. Are there any questions on the resolution? No? I now put the resolution 3 to the meeting for voting on by way of a poll. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the formal business of the meeting, and if no further businesses in this meeting, I declare the formal part of the meeting closed. I would now like to complete the poll process. The instructions for completing your blue voting card are as follows. Please write your name in the space provided on the card. Secondly, unless you wish to vote a number of shares in one manner and a number of shares in another manner, just tick one box. Please sign in the space provided at the foot of the voting card, and finally lodge your blue voting card in the ballot boxes that will be coming round now. The results of the poll will be announced later on and on our website and by ASX. So we'll just wait a minute for all the cards to be collected. Are we done? Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for your attendance today and the interest you show and continue to show in our company. I now invite you to join us and the directors and management for tea and coffee out at the back. Thank you.